I knew I was going to die. I just knew it. I just thought, this is it.
The dangers of abusive relationships.
It is in some people to just kill.
Exclusive access to a pilot project giving you the right to ask about your partner's past.
We're giving people an opportunity to understand the relationship they're in and the person they're in that relationship with.
Tina Nash, blinded by her violent boyfriend, investigates the latest initiative to protect partners in danger.
It's all very well going up to give someone information saying that your partner's dangerous, but what's going to happen after that?
Tina Nash lives with her 2 children in Penzance. 3 years ago, she thought she'd met her ideal man.
I met Shane back in August 2009 at a nightclub. I thought he was a nice guy, silly me. I asked all the right questions. You know, do you have a job? Do you have a girlfriend? Have you got your own place? And he ticked all the right boxes. And he was lovely to me for the first few months, you know. Wouldn't let me buy a thing, always just really nice to me.
Tina had no idea that her new man, Shane Jenkins, had a history of violence. He once attacked a police officer who was trying to arrest him for assaulting a previous partner. Soon, Jenkins became increasingly controlling. It escalated into punches, kicks, and even strangulation.
It started with him smashing my stuff up. And then, in April 2010 was the first time that he actually beat me up, put me in hospital.
Tina called the police, but when the case came to court nearly a year later, Tina was so terrified of Jenkins she changed her evidence to protect him. He walked free from court.
I sort of got brainwashed in a way. You know, sometimes you get used to being manipulated. You're left like an empty shell thinking, what do I do?
Tina was frightened, but thought that she was to blame for his temper. She had no idea he was a serial abuser. One evening, after an argument, she went to bed.
He'd basically come in, he's jumped on the bed, he's punched me in the face, God knows how many times, because he broke my nose and all. He then basically knocked me unconscious, and that's when he's done my eyes. I now realise what he was doing when he was strangling me. It was sort of like like I was roadkill, like he was trying to put me out of my misery.
Tina was in and out of consciousness and unaware she was now blind.
I knew I was going to die. I just knew it. I just thought, this is it. And I said, Shane, I'm sorry, I love you. And that's what I used to have to say to make him stop. And it worked. And he ripped the duvet off me. And I didn't even know I was blind. I didn't know I had my eyes hanging out my head or anything. And he goes, you're blind, your eyes are hanging out your head, you're never going to see your kids again. And I sat up, and the first thing I did is I felt my cheek. My eye was down by my cheek, and I stood up then in shock.
Tina pleaded with Jenkins to call an ambulance, but he refused. He told her the attack was her fault.
He basically kept me for 12 hours hostage with my eye hanging out my head. The pain was immense. It was like someone had stuck red hot pokers in my eyes, and my face was so swollen. I've never felt so sick in my life. I felt hollow and I felt dead. And the only thing that kept me going was the fact that I knew that my kids were in the house, and I didn't know what lengths that he was going to go to get rid of the evidence of what he'd done to me. In my head, I thought he might set fire to my house.
Tina lost her sight in both eyes and spent weeks in hospital. Earlier this year, Shane Jenkins was sentenced to life. The judge said it will be many, many years before he is released. In 2010, 94 women and 21 men were murdered in domestic attacks. Tina's determined that something positive will come out of her experiences.
Hi, Tina.
Hello.
Welcome to the Freedom Programme.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you've come.
Tina's visiting the Freedom Programme in Northern England. It works with victims of domestic violence. According to the Freedom Programme, it takes 35 assaults on average before a victim asks for help. Tina wants to find out why, and whether knowing more about a partner's history would encourage them to leave earlier.
So how many women's in this room?
We've got about a dozen women in this room. They're all really pleased to meet you.
Thank you.
Okay.
He was doing stuff to me in my sleep, cutting me with knives, ripping my clothes off me, smashing my stuff up, just taking everything that mattered to me, you know, bit by bit. He was taking away from me, and I didn't know who I was anymore.
Who are you going to believe? You're loved up in this relationship.
Tina discovers that, like her, other victims sometimes blame themselves for provoking violence, especially if they don't realise their partner is a serial abuser.
How does that make you feel?
This woman is still in an abusive relationship.
So why don't you break all ties?
I wish it was as easy. It's not when you've got feelings for someone and they've made you feel so hollow and no confidence.
Is that not enough to make you leave?
Yeah, but it's hard without support. I haven't got any family, I have no friends. He secluded me for so many years, everybody walked away. And I do feel it's me against the world. I have contacted authorities for support and I just haven't received any. And now I feel as though I'm being judged.
Tina too was isolated by her abuser. She also says she often asked social services if she was Jenkins' first victim. Social services said they couldn't help her with this because at the time they did not have the details of his background.
I wanted to know my ex's past. I asked numerous occasions for my ex's past, but I wasn't allowed to know, and I think that if I had the truth, then I would have known what I was dealing with. When you've got lies, you don't know what you're dealing with.
Gwent in South Wales. Here the police are one of 4 forces piloting a new scheme that gives men and women at risk of domestic abuse the right to ask about their partner's past. If you or someone you know has concerns about a new partner, you can ask police to run checks.
No problem, Leanne. I'll get some around the address.
If they discover a history of abuse or allegations of violence, this information can be disclosed to the person at risk. The scheme is called Clare's Law, named after Clare Wood, who was killed by her violent ex-partner.
So we've got 1, 2, 3. This is the last step now. We're on top now. We're on the top there now.
We're on the top.
So
Tina wants to find out whether it will encourage victims to leave before violence escalates.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Detective Chief Inspector Roger Forty is in charge of the trial.
How is Clare's Law going?
We've had a mixture of applications. We're very mindful within this process that it's empowering people to make an informed choice. But I'm fully aware that is the victim or potential victim's choice whether to leave a relationship or not. I think what's important for us is that we're giving people an opportunity to understand the relationship they're in and the person they're in that relationship with, in the sense that what their past history tells us about them as an individual.
Okay, so when you left, he was there, yeah?
Once a request for disclosure is made, the police assess any information they have on the person. They look for convictions and cautions. More controversially, they'll also consider previous allegations, even if they were never proven in court.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Fleet Marek. My name's Dana Hart. We're here today to talk.
The findings of those investigations are assessed by the police, social workers, and representatives from Refuges and other social services.
We're here today to talk under a Clare's Law right to know. It's come as a result of a right to ask where a gentleman has made an inquiry.
Today they are meeting to discuss an application from a man who was worried about his ex-wife's new partner. He's concerned about the safety of his child. This is the first ever meeting called to discuss an application to release information under Clare's Law. Detective Sergeant Lee Holborn has gone through police logs and found a series of incidents.
Police were called to the address where there was a verbal argument, no offences disclosed. He had left the address. And we got another log stating that she'd been assaulted He held her by the neck and also tried to break her arm. He was arrested for a Section 39 assault and interviewed.
The new boyfriend has been accused of violence in the past, but never convicted.
And I think until we actually speak to her as well.
But the woman they're discussing has recently shown up at hospital with facial injuries and an unlikely explanation.
She was seen at a local A&E with a head injury, alleging she'd fallen 2 days previously. She had multiple grazes to her face.
The committee has a difficult judgment to make. On the one hand, the courts have never found her new partner guilty of domestic violence. On the other, the hospital visit suggests she's already at risk. The meeting decides to override the man's right to privacy and disclose the past allegations of domestic violence to his new partner.
Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
I agree. If she chooses to remain in that relationship, we're not there to judge that. However, we are giving her some information that we think is a concern, and then she can potentially make some decisions around that relationship.
Over the next week and a half, the police try to talk to the woman, but they say they couldn't contact her separate to her partner. The rules for Clare's Law allow officers to approach the potential perpetrator first if they think this will discourage violence. After consulting with his superior officer, DS Holborn told the man that the police intended to disclose previous allegations to his new partner.
And initially, he was fine about it, and then when I spoke to him the following day, he said, oh, you know, well, I haven't got convictions. And I said, well, I understand that, but they were a series of incidents which we felt were serious enough that we wanted to come and speak to his partner about.
DS Holborn later spoke to the woman. She was angry that the police were digging around in her private life. She refused to discuss her new partner's past with the officer.
It is obviously disappointing because obviously there's a lot of work that's gone into it, but at the same time, it would have been nice to explain that situation so she would have had a complete picture, really, of the relationship that she was involved with, and we could have perhaps put an appropriate safety advice to her about that relationship that she's in, but there was just no way that she wanted to speak to me.
Gwent police say their priority was to safeguard the woman. But Tina believes it was a mistake to speak to the man before they warned his partner.
Thanks very much.
He can come up with any cock and bull story now and feed her full of anything, saying it's not my fault, it wasn't like that. Whereas if the police had given this information to this woman, she'd know what she was dealing with.
Tina isn't the only one with reservations about the Clare's Law pilot. Leading domestic violence charities are opposed, arguing that resources could be better spent improving the response victims receive when they ask for help. Tina's on her way to meet the mother of a woman killed by her ex-partner.
I'm on the way now to visit a lady called Victoria. She lost her daughter, Casey, violently murdered a few years ago, and she doesn't actually think that Clare's Law might not actually work.
Victoria Blower's daughter, Casey Brittle, had sustained years of abuse. Police were called 11 times to her home in Nottingham during violent disputes with Sanchez Williams. Victoria believes each occasion was a missed opportunity to save her daughter.
My daughter didn't want to take matters further. For obvious reasons, she was scared, for one. So I think, as far as the police are concerned, they didn't pick up on that, and they should have done. You have to use your intuition when you go to these incidents. You know, they're not going to talk if the perpetrator's there. You have to look around, be observant.
Nottinghamshire Police now accept that their officers failed to follow correct procedure. They have revised their approach to domestic violence and are piloting Clare's Law. But Victoria believes many perpetrators exert powerful mental control over their partners. Simply knowing their past won't necessarily give victims the courage to leave.
Would Clare's Law have helped your daughter, do you think?
Well, it's not so simple. You can't just leave somebody like that. So even if she had, you still have to have safety measures put in place. It's all about safety and protecting the person on the receiving end of the abuse. Maybe some people will just leave, but you still don't know what the aftermath is going to be.
After meeting Victoria, Tina is worried that on its own, disclosure of a partner's history of violence won't be enough to protect people at risk.
It's all very well going up to give someone information saying that your partner's dangerous, but what's going to happen after that? Who knows how dangerous the people are, you know? You don't know what you're dealing with. I think the scheme is going to take a lot of work and a lot of training. There's going to have to be a lot of training that goes into this, because every domestic violence case is different.
In part 2, Tina's emotional meeting with a man convicted of domestic violence.
You all right? I just don't like hearing other people upset, you know. There you go. It's a gorgeous sunny day out here, isn't it? It's beautiful, isn't it? It's like...
Tina Nash was blinded in a vicious attack by her boyfriend. She's investigating a pilot scheme called Clare's Law, in which the police try to protect potential victims by letting them know if their partner has a history of violence.
Okay, there's the table.
Tina's come to visit a women's refuge. She learns while the police are trying new ways to tackle domestic violence, funding cuts mean nationally the number of refuge places is shrinking.
I think nationally Women's Aid turns away maybe 250 women a day who can't access a refuge. So, you know, with the influx of people that will come because of Clare's Law, that money really could be used to make sure that there is better and more refuge provision. Here we turn cases down all the time. We get lots of referrals that we're not able to accommodate, and you know we have to be ringing around trying to find places elsewhere, and it's really difficult.
To find out what victims of domestic violence think about Clare's Law, we questioned 189 people currently living in refuges. 94% said they would like to have been told by the police if their partner had a violent past. 75% said they would have left had they found out about their partner's history. Some of them said it would have helped them to realise they were not at fault.
If I'd been made aware of a history, I would not have allowed myself to be manipulated.
His lies to me about changing wouldn't be hidden anymore. His promises wouldn't be real because he's done this before.
When you know what he's done before, you really know he won't change.
I think she ought to be escorted, but I'll only by Gaynor.
In Gwent, people judged at risk under the Clare's Law pilot are offered a place at a refuge. Detective Sergeant Pete Williams is investigating a request for information from a woman who's heard rumours about her new partner's past.
Yeah, concerns were that she had heard through the grapevine, if you like, third, fourth hand, and then via a family member, that her partner had previously been involved in sexual offences and had a previous history of domestic abuse.
Police and social service files are checked for information. If the police believe someone is at risk, they will tell them. However, if they judge there is no immediate threat, they will not reveal the results of the search. In this case, the applicant is told the result face-to-face.
The checks were done, and I know that the concerns were raised not by yourself, they were raised by third parties about things that have been heard. From the information that you provided to the police and the checks made on these details, we can confirm that the police have no information to disclose relating to the subject of your application, all right?
The message is not completely clear-cut. The detective goes on to offer the woman safety advice.
As it says in there, okay, that's not a categorical, this guy is perfectly safe for you to be with, he's safe to be around your children. You know, if you feel that tempers are sort of becoming heated, and why is that? Is it something you need to address? And of course, if you feel in any danger whatsoever, you need to remove yourself from that situation, okay?
Tina wonders what reassurance this would offer someone with concerns about their partner.
From the information that you provided to the police,
I wouldn't have known what to have done with that information. I would have sat there and thought, right. So they're saying that he hasn't got a history or nothing that they can tell me that's serious enough. But obviously she's got doubt in her head to be asking these questions in the first place.
Tina is on her way to meet a man convicted for domestic violence. She wants to hear what he thinks about Clare's law.
Okie dokie, I'm with you.
Tina has brought Paul, the father of her children, for reassurance. Human rights campaigners like Liberty have criticised the Clare's Law scheme for breaching the alleged perpetrator's right to privacy. Some also argue it can hinder rehabilitation to have past offences dragged up.
You all right? Sorry, I'm stunned.
This is the first time Tina has met an ex-perpetrator. It's emotionally demanding for both him and Tina to hear his story.
I just don't like hearing other people upset, you know.
Since the attack, he says he's learnt from his mistake and supports Clare's law.
How do you feel about when you start a new relationship now that your past could always come up and haunt you?
Well, at first I never liked to speak about it, but now I think any relationship I'm in, and I'm in one now, we have to be very open from the start. Every single thing I've done she knows about.
Do you think it's fair?
Definitely. Anyone has a right to know if you're getting into a relationship with someone who's offended and done anything. I think they should be honest. I think if they're not willing to speak out, they should get found out anyway.
My name's Gaynor Hart, and I'm going to be chairing the meeting today.
In Gwent, police, social services and other agencies are meeting to discuss another application under Clare's law. This time it involves a woman who has recently been assaulted by her new partner. Officers at the local domestic violence unit believe she's in great danger. The man has a history of violence and other serious offences.
The offender is a serial perpetrator in relation to domestic abuse. He has convictions which refer to offences against a person. He has a warning for violence and weapons which relates to attacking his girlfriend with a knife, and a conviction for GBH with intent against his girlfriend.
All her options sort of exhausted, really.
His current girlfriend hasn't experienced this level of violence. The police feel that with more information about his past, she may break all links with him.
So any views around the table on should we disclose and what should we disclose?
In terms of safeguarding her children, she would need that information, wouldn't she?
I think for her to make decisions for her to maintain her safety, she needs to be given that full picture, because at the moment it seems like he's minimised it, it's all the ex-partners. It's not just her.
This particular case, the lady in question has been a victim of domestic abuse herself. However, it was the level of violence with the previous partner that sort of raised our level of concern.
Okay, so that's an action for social services.
The team decides to disclose only those parts of his violent history that relate to domestic violence. A place at a refuge will be available if the woman decides to leave. When the police meet her, they'll hand over a letter containing a safety plan.
And we know that you are high risk from domestic violence. He has a violent criminal record, and one of those convictions relates to an assault on a previous partner in which weapons were used. On that particular occasion, it was a knife.
Detective Sergeant Holborn and Detective Inspector Hart will meet the woman at her house.
The right to know on this one is going to be to speak to his current partner to say, look, even though you're aware of the domestic violence with yourself, is to be aware of this previous history, and also then to put safety planning measures in place with her as well.
It's certainly not about telling her you must leave. It's about her making informed decisions, but it's about giving her some guidance.
Because the woman is in danger, we cannot film this part of the process. During the meeting, the detectives reveal the man's serious assault on a previous partner and make clear she will get further support should she decide to leave. However, the woman claims that she already knows about the knifing and declines any more help.
She is in danger, but she will make those choices. It's always quite frustrating for us. In an ideal world, we would like everybody to leave and make everybody safe.
Isn't there a problem with Clare's law that victims do not want to leave their partners?
It's a massive decision for somebody to leave a relationship, even though they now know information they didn't know before. But I think what's really important, the police service will work with partner agencies. They'll work really closely with that potential victim, pointing out the cycle of abuse so that they understand that the situation they're in is actually an abusive one, and that there's potential for there to be an escalation in that risk.
Me going to meet Roger was very, very important. Just so many avenues that domestic violence goes down. You know, Clare's Law is a start, and I think we can only learn from our mistakes now and go on.
Across the 4 forces in the pilot project, there have been 58 applications for information made under Clare's Law, resulting in 13 disclosures. Police say that at 3 months in, it's too early to say how many of those receiving information will eventually choose to leave their partners. Tina is now back at home with her children in Cornwall.
So what's the sky looking like then?
She has had time to reflect on what she has learnt. Despite the fact that so many victims find it hard to leave their abusive partner, she believes it's still important for people to know if they're living with someone with a history of violence.
I think Clare's Law would have helped my situation because it would have given me the knowledge to have known his history and then for me to make that informed choice for my safety and my kids' safety. After this incident, I really didn't think there was going to be much of a future for me, to be honest with you. But as time's gone on, I realised that there is a future for me, and I have got a lot to offer. I've got a lot to offer my kids. And, you know, life is looking up for me.